Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Welcome to this meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 2nd of September. Apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we received apologies from Councillor Swinbank because he had to declare an interest in the application. So, because there's only the one application, he's just submitted his apologies.
Fine. Thank you. Disclosures of members' interests. Have any members got any interests they wish to disclose? Yes, Councillor Sim.
I was a consultee on a application for the site back in 2017. Obviously it wasn't this application, but same applicant, same site. When I worked as a highways officer.
Sorry, so are you saying that you have got an interest in this application or you haven't? Sorry.
Well, I just was a statutory consultee as a NCC highways officer. So I thought I would declare that because I've obviously worked on it
And are you
previously.
approaching this application with an open mind?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's fine.
No one else? No, thank you. So, determination of planning applications this afternoon. As Chair, I normally introduce the application, ask members if they've seen any site visit videos. I then ask our planning officer to present his report, giving us any updates, any changes to the recommendations. We then have our public speaking slot, 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for a local member, parish councillor, county councillor, and then 5 minutes for the applicant or supporter. The members of the planning committee can then ask questions of our planning officers, and then we debate the planning application itself, asking for a proposal, a seconder, and then the debate takes place and we take a vote. So, ladies and gentlemen, only one item on the agenda this afternoon, on page 15, and that is the erection of 9 affordable homes. 9 affordable homes, land southwest of St Cuthbert's Close, Main Street, North Sunderland. And our case officer this afternoon is John Sharp. So, John, without any further ado, can I ask you, sir, to present your report?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I've got that. Just before we get started, quick update. Just to note that paragraph 7.61 of the committee report mentions that a BNG monitoring fee is payable to be secured by unilateral undertaking. However, this is not subsequently referred to in the recommendation. So it's just to clarify that as a Section 106 agreement is already being recommended to secure other planning obligations, the BNG monitoring fee will need to be included within that agreement, rather than there being two separate agreements. Secondly, just to address the reason that the application is being brought before SPC rather than the local area committee, it was called in by Councillor Renna Thompson as the local member within the 21 days, so it was always going to have to go to committee. There is, we have had advice from our policy team, and there is case law to state that when you're considering 2 minor applications as a cumulative site, as we are effectively in this case, you've got 1 site for 9, which has already been approved, and this second site for 9, that you should consider it as a major application. So you've got obviously the balance there between, taking a minor application to NLAC, bringing a major application to SPC potentially. And it was also advertised as a potential departure from the development plan at the stage where we weren't entirely sure how we were approaching it in those terms that I've just been discussing. So it was felt prudent to re-advertise the application as a departure. Obviously, if you read the application, the committee report rather, we have subsequently concluded that it is acceptable in accordance with the development plan. But we went through that process just to cover ourselves. So in terms, before I start on the slides, then I think it would be useful just to lead with a bit on the planning history of the site, as I touched on just there, which has been subject to a number of planning applications in recent years. Outline approval was first granted for 20 affordable housing units in June 2019. That's the application that Councillor Sim was just referencing there. A reserved matters application was never forthcoming, however, and instead a new full application for 20 units was submitted in 2022. The outline permission fell away whilst the application was under consideration, so it couldn't be used as a fallback position. And in any event, the planning policy context changed with the adoption of the new local plan whilst the application was being assessed. It was at this point that the issue of whether a site of 20 houses could be considered to be small scale. The neighbourhood plan, the North Northumberland Coast neighbourhood plan, that is explicit in saying that small scale is up to 9 units. The local plan, both at Policy House 7 on exception sites and ENV 5 in relation to the AONB, National Landscape as it now is, both refer to small-scale development being supported. There were a number of other technical issues with that application, and the decision was taken at the time to refuse it under delegated powers, partly on the principle that it was too large to be considered as an exception site. So I'll start taking you through the slides. If I open my computer up again, sorry. Okay, so as Chair pointed out, it's the erection of 9 affordable units, phase 2 at St Cuthbert's Close. So this is the location plan as it was originally submitted. You can see there the red line area with a tail going up to meet the existing footpath on Main Street at the end of South Lane. That is just an aerial view showing the same site highlighted in yellow. This did subsequently change through consultation with ecology. The ecology reports and BNG reports were the red line boundary, the way those reports had been written was different to the red line boundary that had been submitted. So we agreed that it was appropriate for that to be reduced to reflect what was in the reports, rather than having to get them to rewrite those reports. You note the tail to the north there has disappeared. Highways were content that those works could be secured by under the Highways Act, so off-site works. So the existing plan, and there's no work has actually started on site as yet, but this is what has been approved in May 2024, with dwellings located towards the front of the site and Suds Basin and open space to the rear. This is just a CGI, a perspective view of what has been approved already. That brings us then to where we are with the site currently, with permission for 9 units extant, as I say, and the application at hand then for a further 9 at the back of the site as follows. So this is what is now proposed. As you can see, the internal road is extended. The Suds Pond is still in the same location, but the open space in front of it reduced to accommodate 2 sets of semi-detached houses, and then there's another 2 sets just to the north of the hammerhead. These are the proposed elevations for units 1, 2, and 3. Just a short little terrace of houses, and the floor plans. plots 4 and 5, pair of semis, and 6 and 7, same design, but obviously due to the topology of the site, they're slightly offset there. 8 and 9 the same, and then the floor plans for the same. Site photos, these are just looking from the proposed access across the field. And again, and then each way along the road from the access, and then looking back into the village and away from it. And that's your lot. It is worth pointing out that the site is beyond the settlement boundary and therefore is considered to be in the countryside. It is within the national landscape, the AONB, as was, but there is no green belt designation, so it's just open countryside. Criteria 1G of policy STP1 sets out what is supported in the open countryside. The development plan as a whole is supportive of small-scale exception sites for affordable housing where they're well related to existing settlements. Local need has been clearly evidenced. The affordable housing would be secured by a legal agreement, and the development would be in keeping with the scale, form, and setting of the settlement. As set out in the report before you, the recommendation is to approve the application subject to a Section 106 agreement securing the affordable housing provision, together with principal occupancy, coastal mitigation and the BNG monitoring fee previously mentioned. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Public speaking this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We've only got one public speaker, and that is Hannah Wafer, and she is speaking in support of the application. Hannah, you've got 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Benicia Homes. Benicia are a well-established housing association who have been providing new homes in the North East for over 50 years and are committed to delivering affordable housing in North Sunderland. The application before you seeks to provide 9 new homes for rent, which will be let by way of local policy, targeting people with a local connection. As the officer report advises, this application is supported by evidence demonstrating that there is a clear and pressing need to deliver more affordable homes in the North Northumberland Coast local area. Approximately 90 affordable homes are needed in the area between 2023 and 2028. However, to date, none have been provided. On balance, the principle of development can therefore be supported, and the application is recommended for approval today. There's widespread community support for affordable housing in the area, and whilst there are some local objections to the scheme, these are mainly from residents who live close to the development site. It has been suggested by objectors that other sites would be more appropriate for residential development. However, there is no guarantee that other development sites would come forward in the near future, or that they will deliver enough affordable housing to meet the needs of residents. This application has the backing of an established housing association who are committed to progressing the development. Objectors have likewise suggested that the proposal is simply trying to circumvent planning policy. The proposed development seeks to deliver an additional 9 homes. Policy HOU 7 of the Northumberland Local Plan supports the development of small-scale rural exception sites. Whilst the policy does not limit the number of small-scale sites that can be considered acceptable, therefore, even when taking into account the adjacent consented site, it is considered the council has the ability to support the development, which will deliver much-needed affordable housing. It's acknowledged that the site is within the Northumberland Coast AONB and on the edge of the settlement. The applicant is given detailed consideration to the landscape and visual impact of the development when designing the scheme. The local authority are in agreement that the proposal would not have an adverse impact on long-range views. Therefore, development in this location can be considered acceptable. The National Landscape Partnership have also recognised that there is a pressing need for affordable housing, and as such, they have offered their support for the development. If approved, Benicia will cumulatively deliver 18 new affordable homes in North Sunderland, which provides a significant contribution to assessing the ongoing housing need in the area. Whilst the adjacent consented extant site is viable and deliverable in its own right, it's considered that the delivery of both schemes together provides a more cost-effective and comprehensive form of development, particularly when considering the economies of scale. We would therefore urge members to support the application, which ensures the delivery of much-needed affordable housing in the North and Northumberland Coast area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, have any of you questions you'd like to put to our planning officers? Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Just clarity, please, on the issue of the rural exception site. I'm aware that the case that of objectors is that it was previously refused when it was 20, saying that was too large. And they're saying that putting 9 to 9, as we try to circumvent the process, what is the policy? What exactly does it say about size and regarding? I get the bit about, and actually I think it's important, we're talking about affordable housing. Sometimes affordable housing is just a bit discounted. This is proper social housing. This is proper affordable housing, which, you know, is a really important thing, consideration for this application. But just on the technical policy legal, what is the issue with the size of the site to fit in with the rural exception?
Yeah, so the local plan itself doesn't actually define what small scale, thank you, what small scale is. That definition is taken from the neighbourhood plan, where policy 1 and the glossary of the neighbourhood plan, I think it is, actually specifies that small scale for the purposes of that plan should be taken to be no more than 9 or up to 9. I forget the exact wording. So yeah, that was the point that was raised, you know, back in 2022, whenever it was, you know, when that application for 20 was refused, and why we've subsequently ended up with, you know, with 2 applications for 9 units, because individually they meet the definition, that, you know, they meet the policy requirement. Taken cumulatively, yes, you could argue that it doesn't, but equally nowhere, and as Hannah's just pointed out, nowhere in the policy does it actually say you can only have 1 small site, 2 small sites, whatever the case may be. I think what it might be worth considering is that obviously the site has previously had permission, outline permission for 20 units. If the applicant were, you know, if this was to go through now and we have a site for 18 affordable houses, if the applicant was subsequently to come back and say, we'd like to put another small scale site in as a phase 3, obviously that would take it over the 20, that would take it over what we've previously considered to be acceptable on that site. So we could effectively, you know, I think we'd have a leg to stand on if we then drew a line under that and said, well, no, we're not going to accept that. You know, in terms of that going to, you know, going to appeal and whatever.
All right, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the challenge and potential one, because on the surface, I could see why somebody could say it's a bit, and it's always good in these things to almost know what would be acceptable. You know, so for example, if we're looking at something and you say, yeah, I can understand it's a bit high, but it's probably just about okay. Yeah. So you kind of, it's always good to think what wouldn't be. I mean, I could see in this, the fact that it's affordable housing is what gets round other things, and if it was second homes or something, that gets round, but it's just to trying to think about this sort of size and what would be the line drawn.
I mean, the key is obviously, and as ever, is to assess what's in front of you. As you know, we shouldn't be getting into the realms of what ifs. You know, so at face value, you're dealing with an application for 9 affordable dwellings, whilst keeping in the back of your mind that there is already permission for an additional small-scale site, just, well, you know, at the front of the site.
I mean, I suppose you could say that it's that thing if you said kept going 999 and you could get up to 900.
But then planning...
It's taking extremely... So it's just to always understand why you could say yes now, but what would be pushing it too far.
But then, as I say, planning history is a material consideration. You know, so you could argue that, well, actually 20 has been approved previously, admittedly under a different set of policy, a different policy context. It was, that was approved under the old Berwick local plan. You would have to then judge whether planning policies have changed significantly such that actually you could come to an alternative view. But, you know, that's for another day.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes?
With it being outside of the settlement boundary, how do we as new councillors justify breaking or breaching the local plan?
Sorry. Are you taking that?
Councillor Rolls, yeah, it's a good question, and you know we work very hard to maintain our settlement boundaries, and our local plan remains up to date to do so. But what we do have, and it's set out, I appreciate that there's a lot of policy and layers of policy to take into account in the report, but what we're saying is within our current Northumberland local plan, there is an exception policy that allows for these types of sites to come forward sitting outside of the settlement boundary with a number of criteria. There's actually 4 different sets of criteria on that. And we say that this application meets the criteria within that exception policy for development outside of the settlement boundary. I should add, it's not very often, if at all, that we receive applications for 100% affordable housing outside of our settlement boundaries, and that's the very reason why there is a trigger and a hook within our plan to allow that sort of development to come forward. Okay.
Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Chair. A little bit of history. When we passed some houses affordable at Embleton, I don't know if it was days or weeks, that suddenly one of the ones that when they got lived in was up on, there's a holiday let or Airbnb. What safeguards do we have, or what are the tools available to this council to say foul or whatever if ever that happens again?
Yeah, so Chair, we've got policy now to protect that very type of situation, and in particular in the North Northumberland Coastal Neighbourhood Plan, it's specific to new development having what we call a prime occupancy condition on it, which means that it's got to be your first home and your only home. It's not 4 second homes, and it's wrapped up in our 106 agreement, and you'll see that's part of the recommendation as well. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, just regarding the Section 106 agreement, within particular page 34, 7.92, 7.93, is this not a way of getting away from paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for educational and health facilities in the area of build? So we appreciate there's been a lot of evidence to say that affordable housing is needed, there's a demand, but is this not a way of slipping through the net and providing affordable housing to that area, but then avoiding hundreds of thousands of quids and leaving with the community with about 5,000 quids worth of coastal mitigation to drawn out a Liz?
So it's a valid point, Councillor Elliott, that you've picked up on, because if it had come in as one application for 18 units, then we would also be seeking a contribution toward healthcare and education. As it is, we have had that application, and you can see that we have refused it. And at the time we refused it, we had just had our new Northumberland local plan, and the view of officers at that time was that it didn't meet all of the criteria that we talked about earlier in the meeting. It didn't meet all of that criteria with it being 18 units. This is different in that we've had phase 1 where we've approved 9, and now they're looking at phase 2. And so we're looking at phase 2 as an entirely separate planning application as being for 9 units. That's what we're asking you to look at today, members. So it does feel a loss. You're right that we're not receiving the education and the health contribution, but at the same time, as I said previously, it's an unusual scenario where we're receiving 2 phases of 100% affordable housing in a rural coastal area of high value properties as well. And that's the balance. So Councillor Elliott, when you're making your decision tonight, that's what you can think about, is that balance as to whether you feel that that loss of the education and the health is so significant to you versus the balance of the 100% affordable housing.
I mean, am I allowed to come back?
Yes, of
Yeah,
course, sir.
just I'm looking at 7.9, 2 and 3, and I think it is against your own policy, the policy spatial strategy, one of the local plan. But is it fair, because it is an officer opinion, and it looks like it's been a difficult one. So we understand the need for affordable housing, but we should be sitting here giving 18 affordable housing and getting that community a few £100,000 for health and education, in my opinion, and it's a hard one.
It is a hard one, you're quite
Yeah.
right. And that's why it's so clearly set out in the report, the thinking of the officers. You know, John's taken you through the legal test, the Wednesbury test of reasonableness. He's looked at all the material factors that what we set to gain, the housing need that we're aware of, the fact that it is an area of high value on the Northumberland coast, and that we don't have a strong pipeline of 100% affordable housing coming through, that on balance, looking at all of it and applying a reasonable person's thought process to this, we're of the view that our view isn't so outrageous, as it says in the report, that it's not an unreasonable decision. But that's for you to think about today. But we feel, with the experience and the knowledge that we've got of the Northumberland coast and the affordable housing needs, that we've applied it correctly and that our recommendation is correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Sim.
With regards to other sites, I know there's the Broad Road and the school sites. Would they not have been a better option, and where they could have possibly put the more houses on to get the capacity, because it wouldn't be outside the settlement boundary, and then possibly they could have gotten more Section 106 and more from the development. But also what was taken from the first phase, Section 106 money-wise, did they claw much from that as well, because it kind of would tie in?
Just on your first point, Councillor Sim, yeah, you're absolutely right. Those two sites are well known in the village. They've been raised as an issue, by a number of commentators on the application. What about this site? What about that site? We can't take into consideration when we're assessing an application before us what else might be available elsewhere. Okay. Yes, we're aware of those sites. Yes, they may come forward. They may come forward for 100% affordable. Chances are they may come forward for 15–20%. I know the Broad Road site, there is an application in train, but there's still nothing happening with the school site, despite the council, pushing it on a number of occasions. So, yes, we're aware they're there, but we need this site as well. The evidence that's been presented shows, I can't remember, was it a need for 90 houses or something like that? So this is a drop in the ocean compared to what is actually required in the village. So even if this site comes forward, and the Broad Road site and the old school site, we're still probably looking at a shortfall. Sorry, what was your other point? Oh, the earlier 106. Again, as a minor application, it would have attracted cost of mitigation. It would have attracted primary occupancy.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I was just wanted to ask what assessment has been made of the school and GP capacity in C houses, and why is there no contribution to education and healthcare been made in this development or the previous one?
So again, that's very similar to the points that Councillor Elliott has raised, Councillor Jackson, and it's it's an important question for you members as you look at this application tonight. Because it is a phase 2 development of 9 units and it's considered an exception site, it doesn't meet the triggers for contributions to education and health. So we don't know what that would be. Had it been an 18-unit development, it would have met those triggers.
Which it actually is. It is really, in reality, is. They
Yes,
haven't been built yet,
yeah.
have they? Yeah.
But the way that it's come in, like many developments that we deal with, we've got one phase which we've assessed and it's got consent for it. So that we have to move past that and now look at the phase that we're at today, which is another 9. I mean, in our experience, if it's of any comfort to you, very often in 100% affordable housing applications, viability can become an issue for a developer, and they may have, if it had come in at 18, presented a viability report and found that the education and health's unviable. In any event, that's speculative. That may not have come forward. We won't know now, but that's why when you're assessing your application tonight, it's on the basis that you're aware that there won't be a contribution to education and health if you approve this. But what you will be getting is an affordable, 100% affordable housing scheme in an area of need.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. John, just 2 quick questions, really. You mentioned it's going to attract biodiversity net gain credits. Yep. Is there a kick-in level on that? Is it anything you build now, or is it 1 house, 5 houses, 7 houses? Because if 9 houses means it kicks in, it's obviously less than 9 houses.
So yeah, BNG is mandatory now for minor applications as well as major applications. What is being provided in this case is on-site habitat creation. So it's referenced in the ecology part of the committee report. What we're seeking to secure via the 106 agreement is a monitoring fee to ensure that is established and maintained for a period of 30 years.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just wanted to know if there was a kick-in level. And what you tell me is everything.
There are certain exemptions to BNG, but
They're very low.
Yeah. Right, that's fine.
Yeah.
My second question, and we heard the applicants say they were targeting local people, but is there any specific things in here which will mean local people will get those houses? Because that's what we want to see.
There aren't, I believe, any conditions in the application securing, but that would be secured through the affordable housing scheme that will need to be addressed through the S106.
So it could be included.
It's not in the application as such, but it will be in the 106. Yeah.
And can we ask officers to make sure that's included?
It will be.
So, yeah, when we prepare the 106 agreement for the affordable housing, we always ensure that the affordable rent is allocated in accordance with a cascade that sits within the 106 agreement. And also, what we know is that our registered social providers like Bernicia, who are going to be managing this development, they will allocate housing in accordance with Home Finder, which is Northumberland's scheme of allocating housing. That does sit outside of the 106, but we do have a lot of comfort that that works and that there is a mechanism where there is allocations in accordance with that agreement as well.
Liz, I'm aware of Home Finder,
Yeah.
and I'm very well aware of the limitations of Home Finder.
Yeah.
And Home Finder doesn't necessarily list priority by locality.
So
it listed by need.
Yeah. And
what I'm asking specifically is,
yeah.
if we pass this and those houses are built and they're affordable housing, the social housing, whatever you want to call it, and I've got a problem with calling them affordable, but never mind, that it's for local people. It's to alleviate the need of the locality where these houses are going to be built. That's all.
Yeah. That's
there not-
noted. So what we can do is take that back as a suite of instructions as we draft the 106 agreement. I do know for certain types of tenure, Councillor Robinson, that it's more challenging to put restrictions on allocations on, but certainly for most of the tenures, there is that possibility. It's in the scenarios where the tenant or the person that qualifies may have to take a mortgage. Those sorts of scenarios sometimes can mean that the allocation policy is applied differently. But we can certainly do all that we can to secure as much of the affordable housing locally through the 106 agreement.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, as Chair, is that the strongest we can do? You know, I think back to an affordable scheme in Long Framlington where we built, I think, 28 affordable homes on an exception site. And again, you know, I'm sad to say Long Fram wasn't that welcoming to this site, but obviously as a local member, I wanted to see affordable housing and wanted it delivered. But in that particular instance, you know, there was a great emphasis that the homes for rent would be let to locals rather than people outside the parish. And, you know, that is what happened. These were affordable homes built in Long Fram for local people. And I'm just wondering, I think it was Two Castles that actually delivered the housing, but in that case, was there not something a little bit stronger that we as a planning authority were able to put in there? Or am I mistaken?
I think the 106 is a really strong watertight document that runs with the property and runs each time it's transferred. So we've got a lot of reassurance that you can't just evade the terms of the 106 agreement. And that every time in the socially rented scenario, they will have to allocate the housing in accordance with the cascade that's in that legal agreement. So in our experience, that is the most successful delivery model that's available to us.
Because the cascade really worked well in Long Fram.
Yeah.
You know, that was the one thing that sold it to the village,
Yes.
was the fact that,
Yeah.
you know, property prices very high. Ordinary folks in Fram couldn't afford it, but this was an instance where houses were being built for people just getting on the property ladder for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, that's reassuring. Councillor Sim, second question.
Obviously, with regards to them being social rented housing, would there be a clause put in so they couldn't, like, the stock couldn't be sold off? Because that seems to be the reason why we've got the problem worrying with social rented housing, and there's none because they've all been bought up. And then that kind of turned into holiday lets in certain areas as well. I know in Newbiggin, they're all at sea houses bought up. You can't even, like, because you've got cash buyers coming from down London, as soon as an affordable house comes on the market, they're gone because you've got cash buyers and they can't wait for people to get mortgages in place. So people are having to move out of the area, which I think is quite wrong. And obviously we're building houses to tackle a problem. People can't get rented accommodation. People can't leave home. You've got 40-year-olds still living at home with their parents because they can't afford to get on the property ladder. Nothing's affordable. When they do come up, they're snapped up. So I think it's important to keep social rented as social rented. So we're not kind of chasing our tail all the time.
There's, we do our best to avoid the socially rented being lost to the market, but there is an opportunity for a tenant to what they call staircase up and start to have ownership of that rental property. As far as I know, and you kind of catch me on the hop tonight, but that is almost like a statutory process that we can intersect. So if the house qualifies for the different criteria that applies to that scheme, then there is the possibility of it. But as far as we know, and what we see in the properties that we are keeping an eye on through the socially rented, a lot of them are back on Home Finder for re-advertisement. Again, we're not seeing the staircasing up and the losing of stock.
I mean, with the shared ownership, that's fine. There should possibly be a certain percentage of them that are allocated that's like affordable for people to get onto the property ladder. But I think it's important to retain a percentage of the rentals as well, where they can't be sold off.
Yeah, there's different types of affordable housing, councillor. So you've got affordable rented, shared ownership, you've got discount market sale properties, and they're all slightly different in how they're dealt with. Within the 106 agreement, there are different sections that deal with these different types of affordable homes and what restrictions are put on there. So as Liz mentioned, there's cascades and housing need provisions for each different type. So your social rent's a very different type of affordable home, so it really depends on what exactly is being provided on this site, which we might not know until we come to drafting that 106 agreement. Things like your shared ownership, as Liz mentioned, it's a statutory staircase and function that we can't prevent. The whole nature of that type of product is to allow people to buy a proportion and then continue to buy that property, so automatically it does come out of a pot of affordable housing at some point if someone buys up to 100%, and that's the intention of those homes. Your discount market properties, they have a restriction on them through the 106 agreement that goes on the title document, so they can't be sold on, they have to stay as discounted sale, and we're able to monitor those that way. So there are provisions within the agreement to try and deal with all these different types of housing and how to best to protect them, if that helps.
Councillor Sim, just on the holiday let point that you're making, people, parachuting in, buying houses, letting them out. Obviously, in addition, yes, there is potentially an issue there with the, with the staircasing, but these properties will have, will be primary occupancy, and that will be for the lifetime of the development. So, even if they were to be sold on, they would still be. There'd still be people living there because that's where they want to live or need to live.
Councillor Ball and then Councillor Hume.
Thanks, Chair. So it's just with regards to 7.62 and how on the previous application the landscaping plan is null and void, really. So with regards to that, I just want some guarantees that without that landscaping plan, that things like flooding will not be affected on the original. I know we're not looking at the original application, but you can't help. Will this application have some kind of bearing on what was approved? Because will the SUDS be enough to, yes, it is for this one, but will it have an effect on what has already been pre-approved? And are we not making a problem for the other houses through putting this one forward?
The SUDS was over-engineered for the first. For the first phase, the LFA were happy with the proposals on the first phase. They are happy with the proposals on this phase too. There is a recognition that the applicant will need to submit a drop-in application, either a Verico or a new full application, just to amend those issues in the middle of the site where the two roads don't currently quite meet up. So that's going to need to be addressed anyway, so that'll be dealt with through a future application.
So that's a yes, you're happy with it.
Councillor Hume.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If you wouldn't mind clarifying for me, some of this is probably being discussed, but I just want to get it clear in my own mind, because it's a very, very important decision to make in a particularly beautiful area, an area of natural outstanding beauty. So with this earlier application of 20 homes on this site, it was refused as a major development. That is correct, isn't it?
That's right.
So
it was refused partly on principle because it didn't fit the definition of a small-scale site. But yes, in fact, I mean, an application for 20 dwellings would be a major application.
Right. I'm just wondering how we can get 18 homes, because that's going to be the second phase, isn't it, across 2 phases, how that is going to be viewed in relation to the 20 where it was like knocked back, if you know what I mean. Please bear with me, I'm not really too up on how to get my point across, but I'm just concerned that there is just a difference of two houses, and one was knocked back and the other one's going to get pushed through on what appears to be a greenfield site as well.
So, Chair, if it's okay for me to answer that, and John, feel free to chip in, but it's such an important point that you're making, Councillor Hume, and it's one that we would have looked at as well. So when we assessed the original application and considered it, it was, as John has explained, considered as a whole 20 to be major development. What was the AONB then, now is National Landscape. Slight change of wording there, but it's the same protection and the same criteria. So, but what the developer has done, Bernicia Homes in this case, is they've listened to that, and that's why they came in with the first 9. They thought, right, we want to try and get a scheme to deliver affordable housing in this location, get it off the ground and put it in. And so that first 9 was acceptable. Now what we're looking at is another 9 on top of that. So almost it's the same as where we were back when we assessed the 20. But the difference is they've done it in piecemeal. And each time you look at that as 9 units, then it's compliant with policy. It complies both with the Northumberland local plan and also the North Northumberland coastal neighbourhood plan, because that is considered another exception site. Normally what we will have is a situation where phase 1 is being built out or almost complete, and then they're thinking about the success of it and that they want to have a phase 2. This is slightly different in that we know that phase 1 they haven't started building it, but we are dealing with a social landlord here, registered social landlord, and what they're saying is that there is value in them now looking toward the phase 2 in order to master plan the whole site now for the 18. But when we're appraising this, what we're looking at is that the 9 unit that you're looking at tonight is an exception site that meets the policy. And sorry, just the last point is we do have colleagues in what we call, it was previously our AONB team, now our National Landscape team, and they, we consult with them. Their views are really important, and that's because their role is to ensure that the AONB is conserved and enhanced, and they have an AONB management plan with specific design guidance. And what the AONB have said to us back in their consultation response is that they would support the exceptional circumstances of this being 100% affordable housing if it's demonstrated to be in the public interest, which we say that it has because we know that there is a demonstrable housing need in the area, and that we don't think it's going to have a significant adverse impact on the AONB.
Right. May I just
come back? Certainly.
What I'm concerned is that this sets a precedent going forward for other developments where it kind of gets in under the wire, because you're just setting a slightly different tone.
That's right.
On it.
Yeah, you're quite right, and that's why we really carefully write the reports to make sure that we are looking at this as absolutely site specific. So when, you know, John's report's really detailed, and when he discusses the actual policy position at the beginning and the exceptions, point D of the exception is the development is in scale and keeping with the form, character and landscape of the settlement. Now, if we were to receive an application for another 9 on top of the 18, we might say, hang on a minute, we know you're coming in with another exception site and you've demonstrated need and so forth, but actually we're feeling really uncomfortable about the fact that you're not meeting criterion D any longer, and that we think that it is eroding the special nature of the settlement and the special nature of the national landscape. So everything's on its own merits, and we're just looking at it in the most open-minded way based on all the material planning information in front of us tonight.
Okay.
Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Chair. I know you've mentioned a lot about the word exception, but just for the benefit of members and people watching as well who'll be taking an interest, could you just explain again in the basic terms as to the exceptions for this site to be allowed development? Because don't we think that what I consider this is like a stealth application. We're building by stealth, going through 2 applications to allow this development of a cumulative number to be allowed to be built. And with all due respects, I know you said it was in the interest of the residents, but locally I don't think that, from what I'm seeing, that it is. And I would say that, aren't we stretching this exception policy beyond its intent?
So, yeah, you know, and I know this is the tension for members tonight. It's exactly as you've articulated it. Is it by stealth, or is it a genuine new application looking for 9 additional units? And that's how we're appraising it. We're saying it is an exception site. It's for 9 units, and we're satisfied that it meets the rural exception site criteria that's in our plan. So the exception criteria is saying that we would support this type of development where the local need for affordable housing is clearly justified and evidenced. And we think that, excuse me, it does for 18 and 9 and the additional 9. B, that the affordable housing is secured in perpetuity through a 106 agreement, which is our recommendation. C, that the development is well related to local services and facilities, including those outside of the development, which we do believe C Houses is. And the final point, D, is that it is in scale in keeping with the form, character and landscape of the settlement. And our view is that it does meet the criteria for an exception site. Those are the definitions that we've got to apply it against, and the report's really well reasoned for that. But as I said to Councillor Hume before, another application on top of that, we might start to see that there's a watering down of that criteria, and we're not happy about it.
And just to follow on from what Councillor Hume was saying as well, I do agree that I'm concerned that this does set a precedent for housing developments being built, is that they will go through a small application when a larger one is refused. But no, thank you, Chair.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Jackson? Did you have another question or not?
Yeah, you asked the same question.
Fine. Councillor Felicity, you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, you mentioned another site in the town, and it was called the Old School site. And I'm wondering why the old school closed. I know that's a kind of not on the planning question, but did it close because there wasn't enough children?
The reorganisation.
I think it was the middle school.
Yeah, it was the reorganisation of education provision in the area, so it was no longer required.
Councillor Rawls?
Just could you explain maybe a little bit the difference between the 106 monies, between what would have triggered 18 properties, the difference between 18 and 9? You know, like it's 30,000 with the coastal mitigation. How much would it be if it was an 18-house project?
Because that's not what's in front of us, we don't consult, so we don't know what those figures are. It could be, you know, if we were looking at something like this in Morpeth, we know that there is already an issue with availability of healthcare and school places. What we find in local areas is that's less of a case, and so the contribution can be less. But I don't know is the answer to that, because that's not what we're asked for today, to know what the difference is. Okay.
But obviously, Councillor Rawls, the question is going through your head. Are we missing out public benefit here, big scale, because we aren't putting that investment into our schools or our healthcare?
Yeah.
Councillor Hume?
Yeah, finally, could I just ask, so that I can get it clear for the decision later, does this application not directly conflict with policy housing 9 on the rural exception sites of the local plan, as well as paragraph 177 of the National Planning Policy Framework, just so that I can be clear on that, please?
I think I'm going to have to look those up. If you just give me a minute so I can just remind myself of the MPPF paragraph.
According to my research, it does say that it's quite clear that it is like outside that. unless exceptional circumstances
Yeah.
are proven. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to, Chair, if you just give me a moment to just actually check the wording of the NPPF. Can't actually get it. Have you got it, John? All right, what does High 9 say, just while we're looking this up? The High 9 doesn't apply to this, does it?
What was the NPPF number?
I'll keep it on High 9 for a minute. Residential in addition to other. Can you just scroll up a little bit more again? Right, to ensure that any adverse impacts are minimised. Yeah. So if you just scroll on down there, I think it's just saying this is all about place. Yeah. So, Councillor Hume, just in relation to High 9, that's about the how it enhances the place, how it contributes to the sense of place. So, you know, is the density and the design well read in relation to the rest of the development? So we would say that this development is in accordance with High 9. And I'm just got the NPPF. What paragraph was it? 177. So that's about flooding and flood risk, planning and flood risk. Yeah. So having applied the sequential tests, so applications for some minor development change of use should also not be subject, nor the exception that should meet the requirements. So I don't think that applies to this development because of its flood risk allocation. So, yeah, it's in flood zone 1, so the sequential test doesn't apply. But at any event, we always consult with the local lead flood authority, the LLFA, and they would pick up on that as well to deal with surface water runoff. And as John discussed, the SUDS feature that's there on the site will manage all of the surface water runoff on the development. Oh, that's okay. Thank you for giving us the time. Thanks.
Councillor Waltz, yes.
Sorry, isn't that after another application would be put in to cope with the 18 houses?
The LFA were content with the application as it stands. The issue with the drop-in application is to amend some of the soft landscaping and the I don't think the ends of the internal road marry up, so that needs to be amended as well. The hard landscaping in terms of the hard engineering in terms of drainage is all fine, and the LFA are happy with that.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Would someone like to move a proposal? Councillor Hill.
I'd like to move acceptance of the officer's recommendation with the conditions and to delegate authority to officers to ensure we do everything we possibly can to make sure it goes to local people, basically, as per the earlier discussion. If I have a second, I'll speak on it now.
Would someone like to second that? Councillor Ball? You'll second it. Yeah. So that's the proposal before you, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone like to speak to
Can I
the
speak on it first? Yeah. I'll speak now.
It's normally afterwards that you speak, Councillor Hill.
To sum up.
I thought you spoke and then summed up.
No, normally you would sum up and yeah. Councillor Dodd.
Yes, Chair. This is one of these applications where you can pick whole. You can pick some, you know, the figures are 9 under the 9, whatever. It looks a little bit, I understand that. However, this is an area that is crying out for some local houses. And my fear and my question earlier was about, you know, we've seen how days after someone's got a house here that it's up on to let to a third party, or it's Airbnb. Because there's some of these communities, they're full of second houses. I mean, we could go to the top of government and ask her opinion, but I mean, she might not be very receptive. So what I'm saying is, you know, I think it's Low Newton by the sea. There's only about 8 or 10 residents in the whole place. The rest of it, and this is similar. So I think you know, sometimes the rules do get expanded or bent a little bit. I'm not saying this has happened here, but I'm quite happy that this goes through as long as we've got the safeguards of that it's not another milk and cow for someone from far away to get on the list and all of a sudden it's on Airbnb and used as a business. So I'm happy that we're going to get 9 units in an area that's crying out for people. I've seen umpteen programs. There was a case up there where the woman that does laundry couldn't employ people or couldn't get people to work up there because they couldn't afford to live there. So I'm happy that it's going ahead and I will support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to obviously speak in favour of it. We, in this committee, are so used to seeing hundreds of houses, so it's really refreshing to see something of this scale in an area where there is a demand for affordable social housing. It's really refreshing to see something of this scale come to this committee as well. And I'm more than happy with the recommendations. And to see this, I think it, as I say, we're so used to seeing hundreds of houses come here, and to see something of this scale that will support that local community support, like make sure that schools have actually children that are living in the area, and because of the conditions and things, I think although it is out of the settlement boundaries, I think it will actually add to that wider area and make sure that the town is sustainable through the winter months and everything else. So I do welcome it as well. So thank you. And it's nice to see that it's affordable homes and not a big developer coming in who doesn't care who they're going to sell it to. It is affordable homes and that longevity as well for that long term for the area. Thank you.
Councillor Felsik.
Yes, to say that I'm totally in accordance with the proposals, firsters and seconders, but also ask the question about the schools, because it is about that. It's about, yes, we could have these contributions for the schools, but if you don't have schools, you don't need contributions, and what we need is families and children, and that is why these houses are extremely important to that community. But I'm happy with the primary occupancy. I think that's brilliant, and the section 106 that maybe goes to people in the locality first. Yeah. I think that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting it, but you know, Plan Training 101, we only consider the application in front of us, and that's for 9 houses. Having said that, on the Phase 1 plan that went up, and we've heard the SUDS is over-engineered, we see a road, an internal road going to nowhere. How fortuitous it's going to join up the road on Phase 2, isn't it? If this had been a major house builder, I might have had a lot more to say. If this was somebody building houses for profit, I might have had a lot more to say. But the profit in this case is people's homes. That's what we're getting. That's what we need to support. People are crying out for this sort of development. We need to support them. That's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Sim.
It's been a hard one for me because whilst I value the countryside and I do feel it is encroaching on going into the countryside and taking that little bit more away, and I do think it is important that we draw the line with it and kind of stop them from building into that, because before you know it, you'll be joining with the next town like we are in Ashington with Newbigin. I do think we need to toe the line with that. However, I'm a big on social housing. I think it's very important, and that kind of outweighs the green belt things at the minute for me, because there is a genuine need. I've got residents coming to me on a daily basis struggling with getting social rented houses, and as fast as they're being built, they are taken. So, sorry, I need a drink. So that is a great demand there. So it's a bit of a bittersweet one. I do support it because for those grounds, but we do need to protect our countryside at the same time. So I think any future applications for that site in particular, we need to be more mindful and put our foot down and insist that they're building on other sites what's available within the town centres and within the settlement boundary as well. But yeah,
Thank you.
thoughts on it.
Anyone else? Just before I ask Councillor Hill to sum up, I just wanted to say a few words. It has been a difficult application, and you know, we've got to deal with the site in front of us and not look back on previous applications. But as an authority, you know, we haven't been great on delivering affordable homes. And, you know, as I said in the plan, 90 affordable homes are needed in that sort of coastal stretch, and we're not doing so good in delivering. So, you know, this is a great application because it's just about affordable homes, and we get so few of this type of application. You know, we get a lot of houses to purchase, but the affordable home element is often small and is just by the wayside, you know. So the public benefit here, yes, it's two separate applications. They are slipping under the barrier. We're not getting those Section 106 monies, but the big public benefit we are getting is affordable homes, which hopefully will keep young people in our towns and our villages and make them affordable for them to rent. So, you know, and I hark back to my own scheme in Longfram, Helicourt View, 28 houses, and, you know, I promise you, they went to locals. It was local families, you know, trying to get a foothold on the property ladder, moving out of their parents' houses, and, you know, almost 2 or 1, those were let to local people. So, you know, delighted because it's keeping young people in our towns and our villages by providing these affordable houses. And as we've heard from our planning team, they're going to try and make sure that safeguard is there to ensure this. So, yes, very much in favour of this application. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. We have, as has been mentioned, a really good airing of all the issues, and I thought I came to a conclusion very quickly on this, but I think it's right when you think it's very difficult to turn this down. I want to accept it, to just test, and thank you to the officer who explained that be comfortable that the rural exception case had been made, which you did very well. I get the point about the Section 106. I've gone on about this before. This damn coastal mitigation, this mysterious. But I think I don't know why it is so difficult, as has been mentioned, to build houses. You know, you thinking there's land, build the houses, there's money to be made. It's made so difficult, and the money to make it feasible for some reason doesn't seem to be there. So, leaving aside the coastal, I don't think we could have done anything else for Section 106. I mean, I don't think people have made some good comments, and Councillor Sim explained very well elements of what is a national housing crisis and various elements of it. It's a national disgrace the shortage of social houses. And I would like to see us using a different category, because for me, you've got social housing, you know, and then affordable housing that can be a little bit social housing is something that we are desperately need. I mean, in my patch, Benicia got development in Seaton Hall, and every day I get families desperate for those houses. You could fill those hundreds of times over. Some really stories of people being waiting years to get a suitable house. I mean years, and the priority, the Dana's priority. So we desperately need these, and I think this isn't just something that we could say. We did look at the legalities and did it fit in for local plan on balance. Yeah, we'll prove it. This is something that should be celebrated, actually, because we desperately need more social housing. So I'm very happy to propose and close the debate on that point.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a good debate on this application. A lot of good points come forward. Councillor Hill has moved approval of this application with, you know, great emphasis on the cascade and the safeguards working. So it's over to you officers to deliver that. No pressure. But ladies and gentlemen, all those in favour of Councillor Hill's recommendation? Unanimous. Yeah. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good application, good debate. Some interesting points came forward. Thank you for your attendance. No urgent business this evening.